Hello fellow anime geeks, and welcome to another video in my 2020 winter anime series. In this episode, I summarize all of my findings, rank everything I tried, and give y'all my general impressions, in the hopes that this video can serve as a comprehensive guide of everything that came out this season. At the time of this recording, everything has released its episode 2, and I've gone back and watched all of them for the things that I liked and the things that I was kind of on the fence about, in order to verify the findings from my first looks. Here's a list of all the anime I tried this season. If you want to see my initial reaction to any of these, links in the description below. And if you're wondering where these titles are, this is how they were tagged. Ecchi is not my thing, but I think I would have also had a hard time trying to put that on YouTube. So, on to the meat. I've organized everything into the following 5 categories. 1. Out of nowhere for the win. 2. As bad as I expected. 3. Highly anticipated victories. 4. Flip-flops. And 5, meh? Let's go in reverse order and start with meh. These anime are kind of just there. They're not bad, but they're not particularly groundbreaking either. And the worst of meh is Seton Academy. Our protagonist is a high school kid who hates animals, so is really upset when he is one of only 2 humans at his high school. A wolf girl is trying to get all types of animals in her pack, without much success, and is now trying to recruit him. They end up becoming friends, forming a cooking club, and trying to survive this little jungle of a school. This anime had good comedy, an adorable intro and ending song, and a setting so strange that it was original, but little to no world building. I mean, forget the fact that there's animals and humans. Why are there dinosaurs? So I had to go back and watch the second episode and was disappointed to find not only did we not get any more world building, but this hilarious concept devolved into male fantasy harem. And I'm not even against those. I mean, I like Uran and Akatsuki no Yona. I just don't like when anime pretend to be something else entirely and then stop advancing any plot whatsoever in order to add another girl to the harem. Onto Tonari no HAKAISHIN. Our protagonist is a high school boy whose grades have dropped ever since he got placed in the same class as his middle school friend, who still suffers from his chunibyo delusions, and their new aloof friend who delights in messing with them. If his chubyo friend would at least keep his story straight, then maybe he wouldn't be so distracting. This is a slice of life comedy. In my opinion, it actually started really hilarious. There were a lot of very quick cutscenes with lots of jokes, but the second episode humor just wasn't really sticking with me for some reason, and the main character is actually just mean. And there's also the fact that chunibyo is kind of an overused setting by now. And onto KOISURU Asteroid, a cutesy girl club slice of life. A young girl makes friends with a kid who sparks her interest in astronomy. Years later, when she joins the joint astronomy and geology club in high school, she's able to reunite with her friend. I mean, there wasn't much more I could put in that description. I understand that it's slice of life, but there were very little points of interest and the characters were pretty lackluster. And I just couldn't escape the manufactured, generic feeling of this anime. It was just another anime about cute girls in a club. On to our next anime, and meh. The mysterious and moody supernatural music drama that is 22/7. A mysterious entity is enshrined in a large clockwork wall below a zoo. A secret organization follows all of the commands it issues, the most recent being the creation of an 8-girl pop idol group. Our shy and moody protagonist is enlisted and joins the strange group to provide for her family. It's a strange combination of moody reflections on adult society and a pop idol group. It's enough to have me scratching my head. The downsides are that the characters are pretty melodramatic, and I just don't trust that there's going to be a valid reason for the mixture of these 2 very strange settings to mix together. And onto Rikekoi, a slice of life comedy. 2 data scientists fall in love but have no idea how to proceed. First, they must ascertain that they really are in love. It's obvious they'll have to prove it. However, they seem unsure of the metrics and must therefore conduct lots of experiments. This guy started with very good comedy, super quick cutscenes that just kept delivering joke after joke. But after watching the second episode, it did slow down. They also introduced more characters and broadened the focus to the rest of the research group, but the characters are kind of lackluster and pretty standard. I'm also not sure if this slice of life has a lot of heart or is really all that special, despite the fact that I love the setting. Okay, HOUSEKISHOU Richard. This cozy detective mystery was actually going to take a winning slot by my first impressions. Our protagonist is a college student with a strong sense of justice and a name that literally means justice. One night, he saves a jewelry appraiser from a drunken beating. He uses this opportunity to appraise his grandmother's ring and finally get some closure on her circumstances. And gets offered a new job. It's got a cozy atmosphere and interesting backstories for the characters. It's a well-established premise that's easy to understand, and it's not trying to be anything that it's not. But the character reactions in the second case were kind of strange and far-fetched, a little bit on the melodramatic side. And finally, the best in category, Pet, a psychological thriller set in an underground world where people with the power to enter a person's mind manipulate the general public. A secret organization carries out the disposal or erasing of minds. Pet had a cool world concept and a well-matched, dark, artistic portrayal, but a less than compelling exposition. The first episode kind of just served to introduce us to the world, but all of the questions that I had remained unanswered after I went back and watched episode 2, because Ocean's 11 style, they just went back and explained what happened in episode 1. It's so slow to start, it's not really making me care. Okay, on to my next category, which I'm calling flip-flop. These anime were hyped. More than 20,000 members were following them on Mal. But in the end, they were just flops. Thankfully, there are only 2 in this category, otherwise this would have been a pretty depressing season. Let's start with Nekopara, a moe character slice of life. In a world where for some unknown reason cats are cute girls, a certain brother and sister have taken in multiple cats, who now work at their cafe. Chocolat is a particularly mischievous but loving one, and one day takes in a stray of her own. This anime was slow-paced and pretty bad at its exposition, and not to mention, it had zero world building. We are not given any reason why cats are suddenly cute girls, and all of the characters, which are cats, are just overused personality types anyway. Seriously. Why are they cats? But onto, in my opinion, the worst of the flip-flops this season, Infinite Dendrogram, a game action adventure. A protagonist logs into a VR RPG where the NPCs have permadeath. Can he save them? And what form will his magical summon, his embryo, take? This anime tried to manufacture some high stakes for what I think are just some flat characters, the whole while trying to pretend it was not just a recycled isekai. I went back and watched the second episode for this one to give it the benefit of the doubt, but my questions were still not answered. One of the main ones being, why is he playing this game and why does it matter? Are the AI within this game so complex that we can classify them as existences that justify our main character having this huge hero complex within the game? And also, sorry, but as someone who enjoys playing RPGs, why is this character awesome from the get-go? Are you telling me that he just walked into Starter Town without doing any grinding and defeated one of the top type mobs? Doesn't make sense. Watch BOFURI instead. Okay. Let's lift our spirits and move on to anticipated victories. These anime were hype, but for good reason. There were thankfully quite a few in this category. Let's start with ID Invaded, a sci-fi, fantasy, psychological mystery. A strange futuristic technology is able to capture fragments of a murderer's mind. Our protagonist is an ex-detective inmate used for his ability to enter into those fragments and catch the bad guy before he kills again. ID Invaded had an original and cool concept. The exposition was engaging, and I like that our main character is an intriguing anti-hero. For this one, I went back and watched the 3rd episode. I watched the 1st and 2nd in my First Look series, and it definitely kept me engaged. It also gave me a better look at our main character. I would say it only has a couple of downsides. 1, the art is pretty standard, and 2, there's an element of fantasy in the technology that they're using that you kind of just have to accept. In my number 5 slot is KYOKUFURI, a supernatural mystery. Our female protagonist is kidnapped by yokai as a child and made into their deity of wisdom in exchange for her right eye and left leg. We catch up with her as a teenager when she falls in love with our male protagonist after they meet at a hospital where he is visiting his cousin. She tries to enlist his help in removing a violent yokai because, as the yokai themselves tell her, he is something other himself. This anime had excellent exposition and a solid introduction to the characters, the world, and the plot. The characters are cool and interesting and really strong, and what it doesn't have as far as an original setting, it makes up for in very original backstories for its characters. And onto my number 4 slot in this category, Eizouken, an imaginative adventure. These are the adventures of 3 friends who want to create animations and tell stories. One who loves to draw and loves to go on adventures herself. One who, regardless of her fame and family position, just wants to draw good characters. And one who wants money. We see the worlds they come up with in a joyous, imaginative, artistic representation. Now, this anime is not my personal thing, but that doesn't mean I can't recognize when something is good. It has funny and unique characters, but where this anime really shines is in its artistic portrayal. The hand-drawn and almost watercolored frames that they portray whenever they're inside of their imagination is really original. And the fact that they made the sound effects whenever they're in these worlds all voice created also adds a touch of nostalgia to it, and the music is really moving. My personal reason for not continuing to watch it is the slower exposition. Onto the next anime, Somali, a calm and heartwarming drama centered around the parent-child relationship. Set in the hidden realm, a forest guardian spirit, a golem, comes across a human child in chains. He leaves the forest with the child on a journey to find information about her parents. This anime had beautiful art with a very unique color palette and a compelling storyline with its own world lore already built in. The only downside I can give it is that the exposition was a little bit slow, but after watching episode 2, I felt like there was a great deepening of the relationship between the characters. The stakes also got higher in a very moving way, but I don't want to say much more or I would spoil stuff. Second place in this category is Darwin's Game, an action thriller. A high school boy receives an invite to play a mobile game from one of his friends, but when he downloads it, he finds himself in a real battle to the death that he can't escape. Darwin's Game is an obviously unique and thrilling concept with well thought out consequences for this technology. I was happy after I watched the 2nd episode that it kept up the pace, the thrilling aspect, and the gore, and we got more explanations on different aspects of how the game works. And finally, my top pick for this category, Hanako-kun, a supernatural drama. Hanako-san, the apparition that haunts the 3rd floor girls' bathroom, is actually a boy, and perhaps not all that sinister. And he now has a human assistant who can help him in his work fulfilling the students' wishes and protecting the school. There is just nothing I could find wrong with this anime. The concept is fun, but with the possibility for great depth and darkness. At the same time, it's funny. The characters are interesting. The pacing is amazing. I'm constantly engaged. I think it's pretty rare for an anime to create an altogether different, unique, separate, strange mood. Hanako-kun has done it. Okay, unfortunately, we move on to my next category, As Bad as I Expected. These anime were not hyped, and it turns out for good reason. Thankfully, I only have 3 in this category. Let's get started with the worst of the worst, ARP Backstage Pass. This is a semi-autobiographical music drama. Honestly, it was hard to find information on this one, but I found out that ARP is a real-life augmented reality band in Japan. Their voices and movements are taken from real students in the International School of Music. This anime will tell the story of how they got recruited for the project and will feature interviews from their friends and family and from them through their avatars. This is an interesting concept. It's an original idea to do a sort of backstage of the real life people that are working behind an augmented reality project. But it had so little narrative. It focused more on animated concerts of this band. Definitely not a standalone project. And number 2 in this category, number 24, a fan servicey drama centered around rugby. Our protagonist returns to his college rugby team after recovering from a serious neck injury. He returns in the capacity of the team's manager, however, and begins his journey of supporting his former teammates, his childhood friend, and the new recruits while remaining close to the sport he loves. I will say this for it, once I realized it was not going to be about rugby, it had a very clear storyline, but it didn't really have an interesting direction. All of the character reactions were over-dramatized, and there was just too much fan service and obvious pandering to a female audience. And the number 1 slot in this category, as in the least bad of the bad, is A3 Season Spring and Summer, a drama in the theater setting. This was mislisted on MAL as a music anime, but it is actually about acting. The daughter of a missing theater director receives a letter from his friend. She shows up to watch their latest production with all of 1 actor, while the owner is literally trying to tear it down. They will have to fulfill all 3 of his conditions within the year to keep the theater running. This actually started out okay. It had a storyline, which is more than I can say for most of these, and there was some comedy that was actually pretty good. But before half the episode was over, it was clear that the storyline wasn't going to be very original, and as more characters were introduced, all of them just seemed kind of recycled. The circumstances were far-fetched, overly dramatic, and sometimes just plain cheesy. And finally, my last and perhaps favorite category, for the win. Hardly anyone was looking forward to these anime, but boy did they crush it. Let's begin with my number 5 slot, Uchi-tama, a cutesy pet's slice of life. Our title character, Tama, is a cat who easily gets lost. Therefore, all of his friends in District 3 are always looking for him. These are the everyday adventures of the dogs and cats in this neighborhood, with an interesting portrayal of each of their personalities. I really did not want to like this anime. It looked cutesy, there's a lot of animals this season, but boy did I find myself laughing. The characters are strangely hilarious. Episode 2 just hit me with a ridiculous character song, and the concept of personifying all of these dogs and cats in a way that their hair and clothing style reflects their personalities is really interesting. Next up, BOFURI, a comedy adventure in the VR game setting. Our protagonist buys a VR RPG game to play with her friend, but her friend is currently banned from playing until exams are over. So our protagonist decides to set up her character, begin constructing a full defense build, have fun exploring the game mechanics, and, unbeknownst to her, begin gaining some notoriety. What I like about this anime is that it's not pretentious. It's just a fun anime about VR game mechanics. Episode 2 kept delivering the hilarious comedy. We also got to see a much larger scope of the world game, like you would if you were playing a video game, and some both cool and hilarious battles. On to number 3 on my list, Orphan, a fantasy action-adventure. This is a remake of a 1998 shonen, wherein Orphan quits studying magic after his close friend and classmate has an accident. An experiment fails, and she turns into a dragon monster. He is able to let her get away and vows to return her to her human form. We catch up with him years later when for some reason she has returned. It definitely gives me nostalgic feels. There's good, solid characters with clear motivations. The development and pacing of the storyline is good. The circumstances of the characters are compelling, and the jokes are still funny. It does have a few downsides. Some of the character names are pretty goofy, and there is the occasional cheesy moment. I couldn't decide on second best in this category, so I kind of copped out and split the slot into Cinnamon Nobunaga and Oshiga Budokan. Let's start with Cinnamon Nobunaga, a slice-of-life comedy in an outrageous setting. After Oda Nobunaga resigns himself to defeat, he contemplates his actions and wonders whether he'll be reborn as a lowly dog in his next life. Well, turns out he is. And not only that, the dog park is full of warlords fulfilling their karma as well. From the poster, I thought I wasn't gonna like this. There's so many animal slice-of-life animes in this season, and this is an overused historical figure, but this iteration is so outrageous. Episode 2 even slowed down a bit and introduced a bit of story, some more characters, and a little bit more heart. And as an added bonus, the intro and the ending song are awesome. And sharing the slot at number 2 is Oshiga Budokan, another outrageous comedy. When our protagonist is taking a walk in the park, she is invited to a nearby idol event, and from that point on, she is gone. She will fanatically follow the idol who invited her to every show and event, buy multiple CDs to extend her one-on-one time, and be the first to camp out for limited products. But she just can't figure out why her favorite idol seems so cold towards her. The fact that this is centered around some die-hard fans brings about some hilarious comedy. The first episode was a lot of quick, witty cut takes, but the second episode slowed down to include a little bit more story and give our characters a little bit more depth. And it got so heartwarming in such a ridiculous way that I felt really embarrassed to be tearing up, but I did. And finally, the most for the win of the for the wins. The number one came out of nowhere and stole the show anime is Runway de Waratte, a shonen about achieving your dreams against all odds. When the daughter of a modeling agency director fails to grow to supermodel height, she is stuck trying her best in a negative feedback loop until she gets to know a classmate who is trying to support his family while fulfilling his dream of designing clothing. Together they embark on a journey of hard work to make both their dreams come true. This whole thing is well thought up. The setting is pretty unique to anime, and it has an interesting and engaging dual perspective on the setting. This dual perspective also helps in making the storyline really engaging because it's always moving. The characters are awesome. I mean, they're good, ambitious, hardworking shonen characters. Oh, and also, maybe apart from Project Runway, I've never seen such dramatic sewing in my life. Well, that's everything I tried this season. For completion, I would like to give the following anime a quick mention. I'm still waiting on the US Netflix release for the following two guys. These two are hard to find shorts. As for my favorite anime this season, that would have to go to Hanako-kun. But I am watching DARWIN'S Game, BOFURI, HOUSEKISHOU, Richard, Orphan, Cinnamon Nobunaga, Oshiga Budokan, ID Invaded, KYOKUFURI, Runway, Somali, Uchitama, and 22/7 just to see what in the world it is. I am glad that we're finally over Isekai, but this season does seem to have two themes: animals and music. Well, that's all for me this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. So many animal slice of life. There's so many animal slice of life animal.